Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 33, and I had a lovely conversation with Alissa Moreno, and she is a fascinating woman. She is a teacher of meditation, a student of meditation. We talked about Ayurvedic medicine. She lived in India. She's traveled all over the world. She's a performer, a songwriter, musician, mom, wife. Super cool. I really, really enjoyed speaking with her. We bonded over infrared saunas because if you guys have not been in an infrared sauna yet, it will change your life. I'm not even kidding about that. I don't get paid to say that. I'm just saying it. If you're in Nashville, there's a place called the Sweat House. Oh my goodness. They have these infrared heat pods. Love them. Anyway, off topic. Back to Alissa. Check out this episode. It's so cool to hear her journey. She talks about, bringing her parents to India and going through some medical stuff with them. And we talk about the Ayurvedic stuff was really interesting. I don't know if you know much about that, but you will in a few minutes when you listen. The usual stuff. Thank you for spreading the word. I know a lot of people are starting to learn about Hey Human because their friends are sharing it. I really appreciate it. It's great to get it out there. HeyHumanPodcast.com for links and information about people that are on the show, or just people that I find interesting in history. I'll put them up on the website with links and stuff. What else? Instagram and Facebook, Hey Human Podcast. On iTunes, please, if you have a couple minutes, go on iTunes, and under Hey Human Podcast, you can review it. You can rate it. It's really super helpful. I'd so much appreciate it if you would review the podcast and keep sharing it with your friends. It's the best thing ever. And on Google phones, you can download the Podbean app, and that's free. And then Hey Human is on Podbean. So lots of different ways to listen. I hope you use them all. Thanks so much. Thanks always. Thanks a million. Even if one person was listening, I would be tickled to do this. And knowing that it keeps growing it makes me so happy. I've got listeners in Belize and Australia, shout out, New Zealand, Brazil, obviously the US, and just in Europe and all over the place. It's so cool. It's so very cool. Thanks, everybody, and enjoy the episode. Alissa Moreno, she's super cool, and here we go. Alissa Moreno.
Hello.
Hi, thanks for being on Hey Human Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Susan.
Yeah, so I've known you for a little while, but not really known you we have mutual friends, and Nashville is a small town and all that, but I was piqued with talking to you because I sat next to someone at a wedding who mentioned that you had spent time in India, and I thought, well, that's fascinating. And then when I did a little wiki peeky, as I like to call them, it said that you were born on a Navajo Indian Reservation. And I was like, God, the story gets better and better all the time. So if we may start sort of there, and then we can skip over, whatever, and get to India. But you were born on a Navajo Indian. Are you Native American?
Yeah. No, we're not. We don't have any. I just finished Ancestry.com, so I know this now.
Okay.
Like zero. But my parents were both school teachers. So government workers and educators can live. So doctors that are hired by the government to run a clinic on a reservation, or educators, because there was one school. My mom and dad both worked there.
Okay.
Elementary ed. And so it was like literally a double wide, single wide, not double, that's right, exaggerate, trailer.
That was the school.
On property that we lived in.
Oh, that you lived in. Okay, on the reservation.
On a Navajo reservation.
Wow. How old were you when you left there?
3. Like just before 3. So I was about a year behind Ryman, my son. And I look at the difference. We moved him to LA when he was around 2, and he has some memories now, and I think, yeah, that's equivalent to my memory. Yeah. They're like snapshots.
Yeah, so it didn't really shape you as a human being so much.
Not, well, in some ways, significantly. Like, for instance, I have this really vivid memory of, I guess that he would be referred to, like, as a shapeshifter.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah.
It's already getting good. Okay.
Really, freaked out my dog, and I just have a vivid memory of my lab losing his little doggy mind. And you can say like, oh, well, it was a full moon, or dogs don't like strangers, but I remember Mom and I both being aware enough to go, huh.
You mean like a human being?
He was passing through.
Yeah.
And we all felt the significance of his
energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how different that is.
Yeah.
And I remember that, and I remember these like imprint moments with chickens, for instance, which, again, my son's really fascinated about, like, wait, those are animals? If they're dead on our plate, or alive running in a coop? Yeah, same difference.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think any of my other sort of family or friends were exposed to that or thinking about that this young.
Yeah.
Just because they were around, so it raised the conversation early, and that's how those few ways it sort of sculpted me.
How did your parents happen to pick the Navajo reservation?
That's a really good question. I think that was kind of like what Dad got out of grad school, and they moved back to Albuquerque, where my mom was from, and that was kind of the first. It was like they met in Berkeley.
Yeah.
And they were young and wandering, and there was the first available position. Yeah.
Gosh, that's so fascinating. All right, so your life has been spent as a performer and a songwriter and a writer, right? So you do all the things and producer, correct? Yeah.
I guess like writing and producing are the side effects of being a performer and entertainer.
Sure.
Quite honestly.
What's your favorite thing of all those things to do?
Performing.
Yeah.
But then every time I write, particularly songwrite, I go, this is what I want to do. Why do I do anything else? And then I get back on stage and I go, what? Why? Why do I do anything else? And then I record a new project and I think, I just want to record.
So. You sound like me. That's how I am. Yeah. I used to say, people would say, why do you do so many different things? And I used to say, it's because I get bored easily. And then I realized one day, no, that's not it at all. It's because I get curious easily. I get interested easily. Yeah. It's not a negative. It's a positive. Yeah. So
that's funny. In our family, we call it attention designed to dream. A lot of people call it ADD.
Yes. I like that.
But I just...
Attention designed to dream?
Yeah.
I like that.
I'm
going to steal it. You heard it here first. I'll give credit where credit is due. So, tell me about India. How did that come to be? And why did that come to be?
So many years later. Gosh. Because I've always been a little bit of a, I don't know what the word is. Like, I just never had this sense of, like, extremely fitting in. Mm-hmm. But I always was kind of seeking that. Mm-hmm. And even just from moving from Albuquerque to Santa Fe was a significant difference. Like, I went to school in Santa Fe, and that felt life-changing, because it's a much more, there's a mystical, spiritual vibe there that I felt like that's what was missing. But then, of course, there's always something missing, because wherever you go, there you are. Right. So next was Hawaii for me, which I moved to.
Talk about spiritual.
Yeah, it was awesome. Wow. And a total whim.
What part of Hawaii?
Which made it cooler. Yeah. Kailua Kona.
So how old were you when you did that?
21.
Oh my gosh.
Like the day I graduated school, I had a girlfriend whose grandmother had saved money her entire life. She was like one of those successful war stories. Like, husband passed in the war, but she waitressed every day and bought a house and then bought more houses and then lived in Hawaii and waitressed till she was 83. And, just a really cool woman. So she sent back money and said, bring a friend, like, come to Hawaii for a week and stay with me. And we did. That was our graduation present. But I didn't have enough money at the time to get there. So I was reliant on Becca. And my grandfather, who I'd only met a few times in my life, was living on the other side of the island. It's like maybe 2.5, 3 hours away. And we were taking a bus to visit him. And I turned to Becca and I said, I wish this were my bus ride. And she said, it should be. Like, it could be. You should move here. And I said, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And she said, how? I said, I'll just stay. She said, I double dog dare you. And I did. She left Tuesday and I did not. And that was like
gosh.
The beginning of my sort of
That's incredible.
greater quest for like deeper meaning, I think, and not feeling alone in a room of people.
Yeah.
Because then you're really alone. You're literally isolated on an island.
Uh-huh.
You know, I had to find a home. That was a Saturday, and she left Tuesday, which I found a job and a home Monday night, which is pretty cool.
What was the job?
I was an aloha girl. So I would like aloha and pass out a coupon for a restaurant for $2 a coupon at this sort of outdoor mall for an Italian restaurant, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Where did you find a place to live?
With a very PTSD experiencing war veteran. Oh my gosh. Who had a girlfriend that was in LA. That really wanted that second room rented out. That would always talk to me on the phone but never reappeared. So that was like its own story. Oh, man. And he lived on the top and I lived on the bottom. But she organized it and I rented out essentially the office of their townhome.
Yeah.
But he was suffering from some pretty severe post-traumatic stress disorder, which I didn't know. So that was that was a lesson in
Was it dangerous?
humanity. In the end, it felt dangerous, but I moved out in the dark. With an attorney friend that I had met, and she and her mom helped me get out.
Holy moly.
Yeah, it was quite a to-do, but it didn't sway me, and I ended up getting a job in the community theater that I met them in, and
Yeah.
teaching music there and at a Waldorf school. So
Oh,
it worked out. Yeah.
That's so neat. How long did you stay in Hawaii?
I was there a year.
Oh, okay. Short.
Perfect year, because then Y2K was happening, and everyone thought we needed to convert our money to gold and fly to wherever we were going to be located, because there'd be no more flights because all the computers were going to
the planes were going to fly the sky.
Right. So that was
We
fascinating.
do have a sense of hyperbole, don't we? Humans.
Totally.
We're fully into that.
And I remember like not quite believing it, but thinking, oh my gosh, like I'll never see my family again. I can't even afford to fly home anyway.
Yeah.
Like I better just get home.
So you said adios to Hawaii.
Yeah. On to Los Angeles. And Los Angeles is where I met my meditation teacher.
Okay.
Who, funny enough, I really got into meditation for sleep. Essentially, I didn't have enough time to sleep because I was building a career. So I had several jobs. You probably can relate, as can most artists. And and it just was like a thing where you could go on this Sunday night to this free talk about meditation and the benefits and needing less sleep. And
Transcendental?
it's a form of TM
Okay.
called Vedic meditation.
Okay.
Yeah. Same branch, like we have the same master of our tradition, a guy named Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And I mean, the minute I walked in, I was like, yep, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. But it still didn't even occur to me the lineage or where I was from or why I was so intrigued by it.
So before you met the person that you became your teacher, had you thought about meditation, or did it cross your mind?
No, I mean, I guess
Hawaii
as a
is pretty
kid,
meditative, I suppose.
Yeah, and I've always made up my own sort of hypnosis and meditation, self-hypnosis, like to break bad habits or succeed or fall asleep. Like I suffered from insomnia as a kid, so I'd make up all these, but actually meditation wasn't that enjoyable because I would try to erase my mind and I'd get stuck with the chalkboard eraser and the chalk powder. It would drive me nuts. Like the OCD side of me did not like the idea of meditation. So when I found my teacher, a guy named Tom Knowles, I thought, oh, that's what I wanted. That's not trying to meditate. That's having something that's so charming that your mind turns off. So I'm in. And a couple of years in of practicing and studying with him, he thought we all should take a trip to the sort of home of the tradition and practice. And I was so busy at the time in my career, I'll never forget this, that I had a manager at the time who kind of ran my daily life as well. And so she booked the flight and booked everything that I had to do. Mm-hmm. And I was in a session and running late to the airport. Mm-hmm. And I literally packed like a shirt and some yoga pants. And they said, we'll buy some clothes and like some of the more traditional garb when we get there, so don't pack a lot. But I didn't even look up the temperature. I didn't even think about the weather or what, like for this 2-week trip. And when I got there, I thought, why are they blowing heaters outdoor at this airport? They blow heat? That's so weird. Before it occurred to me that was the temperature. That was hot air. That was like how little I knew.
Oh my gosh. You really are a leaper.
Yeah. Yeah. Because couldn't tell you the language. Someone asked if I spoke Hindi, but there's so many dialects. But I hadn't even thought about that. I was like, oh, good Lord. No, I don't know a lick of Hindi. Which I later had to learn because I did a local performance that then people wanted to come up and talk afterwards, and I didn't know one word.
Oh my gosh.
So I started learning and practicing. And
how old are you at this point?
At this point, I must have been about 26 or 7 or 8, maybe. I was like 28.
And the plan was to go and...
The plan was to just be there it was a 2-week trip, with travel days, like a 12-day trip. Mm-hmm. 2 weeks gone with all the travel, because you fly in to Delhi, right? But then you get a car that takes you to Rishikesh for another 16 hours, which it shouldn't have been 16. That was like...
Those are the cars where you look out the window and you think, exactly. Please let me live to see the end of this.
And you're playing chicken with like the semi that's coming on the...
That's filled with chickens.
Totally. Really
driven by a chicken. You're like, oh my God. Yeah.
So that's funny, because then we're ending that trip. That's like a beautiful ashram where we're all studying with the teacher. There's probably a group of 40 people from around, mostly Westerners, Australia, UK, America, Spain. But then I'm starting to become intrigued with this whole deeper level known as Ayurveda, which I had practiced some Ayurveda, which is basically a philosophy of health. Like
Ayurvedic medicine, right? Mm-hmm. That's where that comes from. Yeah, okay.
Totally. Like, you wouldn't eat berries in winter because they aren't available. And you probably wouldn't spice with cinnamon in summer because it's really hot and warming. And just really simplistic things that you can really study in depth. And I started asking around, and everybody said there's a place in Shalimar Bagh, which is a part of Old Delhi. And I just decided I'm not going back, which did not go well with everybody I was working on this project with and with management. And
because you were in the middle of doing your music thing.
Yeah. But I just was so moved by this, and I just thought, I won't make good music anyway if I don't know more of this. So I stayed, but that was the first day I got on a train with no tour guide and no other English speakers, and that was a big lesson. Even the signs, Hindi, and there's like 8 other dialects that are pretty prominent, and I can't remember one right now.
Urdu?
Yeah. And what's the O? It starts with an O, and my friend Nara speaks it really well. And it's a little bit more traditional and like farm. That's kind of what you're riding through on the train, and I'm going, oh my Lord, I don't know anything. And then if you're trying to connect via phone and people do speak English, the connections are hard, and then add the accent.
Truly, this is not an industrialized world in places. It's now it's probably a lot better, but 20, what is this, 10, 15
this would be like, let's think, 7 or 8. And we're in 10 years ago.
10 years ago, yeah. So this is not...
No.
Yeah.
And I was just so unprepared. It was really enlightening. I was like, whoa, I might just disappear here.
But your body said stay.
Yeah.
Your soul said stay.
Which is cool.
Did your brain get in the way of that at all?
No, but I never have that.
You don't have that problem.
Yeah. I'm not much of a thinker. By any means.
You're a doer.
Good or bad.
A feeler. You're a feeler.
It's a total feeler.
Yeah.
Like when you do those Enneagram tests, I'm always, all 3 of mine are in the emotion.
What's your birthday?
Triad. March 14th.
Oh, Pisces.
Yeah.
Totally. Feelers.
Totally.
Yeah.
And Yeah, it does get me in a lot of trouble, but it also generally is a great way to go, especially if you're married to or ever work with someone who's more of a of a thinker, of a
That's a
planner.
good balance,
Yeah.
though.
Really good balance.
Is he more, your husband
Totally.
is more, balanced?
Yeah.
Isn't
Yep.
that funny?
Like, he doesn't even like an emotional moment on a TV show or a movie. He'll talk right through it.
Really? Oh, that's so
But I go,
funny.
that's perfect. That's why you're married to me. You know.
You can bear the brunt of the emotions for the
Totally.
both of you. And he
plan.
can be Spock for the both of you. It's great.
It's perfect. And I've always had those in my life.
Yeah.
And people tend to be drawn to a person like me where they'll say, oh, I'm so stuck in my head, or I get in my own way, or I have analysis paralysis. No, I don't have any of that. So we're good. I can be a good example of why it might be okay to have a little, but I can also be a really fun partner.
So what did you do? You're on the train and you're like,
Yeah.
I don't speak Urdu, I don't speak Hindi, I don't speak any of the other things.
Uri, that's what I'm thinking of, yeah.
Okay. And
That's another one that I have that's like becoming more prominent the closer I get to this old village.
Is this the village that I listened to Experiments in Truth, Ram Dass?
Ooh,
and
cool.
I think he talks about that village.
Oh, does he? Cool.
I feel like I remember the name of it.
It would make sense because Maharishi Mahesh Yogi has an institute there.
Maharishi's.
Yeah.
I have a great, not to diverge from the wood, but so I listened to Experiments in Truth. This was probably a year ago, and I was like, oh man, this is so good. And then as soon as I was done listening to it, I started listening to it all over again, right?
Wow.
And he keeps talking about Maharishi.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, man. And they're talking about Maharishi being kind of a trickster, and he's like, nobody died. When he died, and Ram Dass was so devastated, and he's like, why are you... as he was getting sicker and sicker, he's like, why are you so sad? What's the big deal kind of thing? And he said, I'm still going to see you all the time. And I remember listening to this. I had on my earbuds, and I was doing the Audible. And I was walking around in my kitchen, and I opened up the refrigerator, and I will not forget this. I opened up the refrigerator, and I'm listening to this. And I think to myself, man, you say that you can bend time, that you can be all places at once, that you do not die, you can manifest things out of thin air. He's saying all these things to Ram Dass, and I was like, gosh, I could use some wisdom. I was having a real particular tough time. I was like, just a little wisdom. And I shut the refrigerator door, and I went about my business. And then the next day, I get these daily quotes on my computer,
cool.
In my email, and I'll be damned. Guess who my daily quote was from the next morning?
Maharishi.
Yeah.
You're kidding. That's
I'm not
cool.
kidding. So I was like,
cool.
what are the chances of that? So I printed it out and I stuck it on my wall.
That's so cool. Do you remember the quote?
Yeah, it's the one about, it's very long. It's about being loving in the world that tries to keep you from behaving that way with all of its stuff. It was a perfect timing for it.
Yeah,
That's
so
but
cool.
I mean, what are the chances? Or I was like, man, I wish you would tell me something. I need something. Yeah. And the next day, he's like, sure, I'll send you an email tomorrow.
I love it. Yeah.
Makes you wonder. Makes
Totally.
you wonder. So anyway, all right. So you're on the train.
Yeah, I make it by, I don't know how. I've called them about 17 times at the Maharishi Ayurveda hospital, and they're beautiful and really helpful. But it's still like, even just trying to find a cab, communicate with the cab driver, make sure you're in the right city. It was shockingly like, wow, is this the right move?
Did you have a sense of peace about it, though? I mean, did you ever think, oh my gosh, this is where I get murdered?
I had that thought a couple times. Once on a walk when I really got lost. I was walking through an alley and I thought, oh, good Lord, this is really that story where you see that, like, dumb white American girl that went off walking,
Right.
But no,
Plus the
I
redhead, they're probably like, what is this magical
always,
person?
Yeah. That's happened to me always. Living in Mexico, I've made mistakes like that. And yeah, I don't know. I probably had like a pretty free sense of my life anyway, and this thought that like life wasn't contained in a body or something like, I don't know what
I'll be back
thought.
later.
Maybe, or I don't know, just careless in a sense, but carefree, not careless.
Yeah.
So it never really gets me, but there will be moments where I will, like, my heart will go, what have I done? This cannot be good. But they always work out.
Yeah.
Inevitably, it's not the end. And what is that quote? I just read that today. If it doesn't end well, it's not the end.
Mm.
It's
a great quote.
That's so true, and I can't even remember where I read that today. But I think it's actually my friend Paige. She's a great author. I think she puts that quote on one of her books. But yeah, I make it to the hospital, and that is its own experience in and of itself, because I was a big fan of Lost at that time.
The show.
Yeah, which was current, it was airing on ABC back then, and they had just gotten into the hatch.
Uh-huh.
That's what this place looks like. I remember just going, oh, what the... That's like pretty obscure. You have to be a really big follower of the show.
Yeah.
Lost to remember this other old world that they kind of discover underground that was completely Maharishi Ayurveda Hospital, down to the little computer room with the one computer.
Well, they may have gotten it from that. You never
I
know.
think so, actually.
Yeah.
In hindsight, I really think
Yeah.
so. I think it's like based on TM. And, but the doctor there is so lovely, this man named Dr. Raju. And again, it was like, oh, now I know where I am and belong, and done. I'll stay for a week. 02, 03. How long's your program?
At the
hotel.
It's
It's a hospital, but it is like staying in a hotel.
Oh, okay.
In a hostel hotel sort of situation, because anyone that practices Ayurveda, which is about a third of the population of India, takes a retreat twice a year called Panchakarma. We would probably call it Club Med, and we do something like that where we go and juice and get sun and exercise and rest. This one is more based on your Ayurvedic dosha, your body type, and they'll cook specifically for sort of pacifying the doshas. And
what is a dosha? So like your
you'll
little
have 3
wind spirit?
body types. Yeah, it's like being a metamorph or an ectomorph or an endomorph.
Yeah, sure.
But they tie it more into personality and spirituality too, which is funny because when you start to look at what we'd call an ectomorph, right, which would be like more hard angle, more thin, more dry, they'll tend to be faster and have higher twitch muscles and be more successful at like running and thinking up new ideas quickly.
Yeah.
And you'll look at what we'd call an endomorph, and they're a little more slow and soft and
What are you?
buttery. And I'm right in the middle.
Oh.
It's called Pitta. So like flame, tend to be a lot of performers and like businessmen, which I kind of understood the more I studied it. But even your muscle mass, it's easy to lose, easy to gain. Your skin's not super oily, but it's not super dry. Your coloring has a lot to do with it, and your personality.
How do you find out what you are? Is there a test? Or
Yeah, there
do you
are
have
tons
to
of
go to
tests online. Like Deepak Chopra has a really fun, easy one. But your Vaidya, your doctor, will tell you the true, what's your Vikriti, what you were born with.
Wow. Interesting.
That'd be Prakriti, actually. Vikriti would be like what your imbalances are or what's dominant now.
Are there doctors like that here in Nashville?
There is one. I've met one. Her name's Susan as well.
Ah.
And, boy, tons in L.A. and Albuquerque, oddly, like one of the greatest ones, and I never knew it. He was miles from my house growing up, which is wild. Dr. Ladd. So it is incredible. And staying there, I mean, I like honed in on just myself and art, and one super inspiring friend that I met, and she was on a similar journey. We were like pretty much the same person, but she was from the UK and the Philippines originally, and Australia for several years. But even to the point that we were signing at the same, competitors of major publishers and labels, and we had the same interests and the same histories, and it was weird.
Fascinating.
So we became fast friends, and it was pretty much nourishing that friendship, nourishing my body and soul, writing every night, which I would do on that little computer in that weird little room, and watching this pigeon that had eggs in her nest for like a month until her eggs hatched, her babies were born, and a cat took one, which was a Beely, if you speak Hindi, now I know. But man, that was it. And when our doctor would lecture, one of his specialties was breast cancer. Now, I so funny, but 2 years later, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I was like, well, that's weird. I know exactly where we need to go. So I ended up back there with my mom and dad 2 years later.
Were they open to that? I'm having a major deja vu right now.
Really?
Like, major. It's tripping me out. It's so weird. Were they open to it then?
Totally. Dad's like, always wanted to go to India.
They're from Berkeley.
Yeah.
Of course they were into it. What was I thinking?
Yeah, Dad's like, I mean, he is a seeker. Like, I think he was going to be a Jehovah's Witness. It's like he was born and raised like hardcore evangelical Christian. No judgment at all, but he just found that those people in his family were pretty critical and pretty hateful, honestly, behind each other's backs or to people of different religion, race, color, preferences. So he was like, oh, well, it's a bummer because I love Christianity, but I don't like this box that I'm in. So he spent his life. I think he really found Yogananda, who does some beautiful books for people that tend to be born in a Christian culture that want to meditate or practice yoga, and even interprets the Bible for them, or his teacher did. And so Dad was like, oh, I've always wanted to go to India, because some people even believe that Jesus was in the desert with the yogis for 40 days.
That.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people, actually. Yeah.
So
at that time that he's sort of missing.
Yes.
Just because of the things he said, the way he lived his life, what he preached. That's like
the kingdom of heaven is within.
I mean, this is total Eastern philosophy. It's not like, this nice Jewish kid's going to pick all that up unless he got the heck out of Dodge for a minute. Exactly. So I know that people would argue me, and they're welcome to the argument. It's fine, but I do truly believe that he did go seeking. Yeah. Because that's the kind he was a humanist.
A cool person does, yeah. That's what any cool. Yeah, I agree.
Jesus was a cool dude.
It was I loved it. And spending that time, not moving to India, spending those 6 weeks there that first time was like, I loved that about Hindus that I met. They'd be like, oh, the Bible is so beautiful. I put it on my altar and I read every day and pray to Jesus. I would think that is so cool, because that's not what I'm getting here on this side if I tell someone I go to India. They're like,
someone in America.
Yeah, you better know.
We're a very young country. We have very young philosophies. We're young. We're like the upstart elementary school
kids. So it's probably scary. It's like fear of the unknown.
Sure.
So I liked it.
India's very, very old.
They've been around a minute. Yeah, they're like, oh, Catholicism, cool. Yeah. I'll put this rosary bead on my altar too.
Yeah, my dad and I joke because if I go get, let's say, acupuncture or something, he's like, oh, you're going to one of your witch doctors, and I laugh and I'm like, 1 billion people cannot be wrong, right?
And
they've been around a minute.
So many more years.
They've been around a minute and think they kind of got it down. So
it's true. I appreciated that a lot about this doctor, because he would always say, we're like one of the most ancient, medicines, Ayurveda, but that's not to say we're the best. Because when you look at it, the way Ayurveda looks at health is like a jar, and this jar is starting to fill up, so your Ayurvedic doctor says, you need to empty that out because that's not looking good. So you change your diet, you tweak some exercise or wake-up times or sleep times, and ideally that would leave the body. But in the West, we can't see it till we have an MRI or a mammogram or a CAT scan or something that tells us, like, this has exploded. The jar is overflowed and it looks like a tumor now. Then we're the very best at treating at that point and removing. Like our surgery, he said you'd never want to have surgery here with an Ayurvedic doctor. Like, no, we don't even have the sanitation. We're looking to the West for that. Yeah. You are looking to us for the spirituality and some of the preventative medicine, but we're looking to you as the cutting edge people in surgery and chemo and radiation. Not that we hope to never have that. They don't even use the word cancer in Ayurveda. But that was cool. It was like, oh.
So your mom...
Good mix.
You got your mom and dad to go there. And so she started... How far... What was the stage?
Mom had stage 2B, breast cancer.
Okay.
She had... it was pretty near the heart muscle and a couple lymph nodes. So it was like, we can do chemo and radiation, but here's what we're facing. Statistically, it's not great odds. 50% success rate, but that's not a good thing to hear, and especially when you're younger.
How old was she?
She was, I think, in her 50s.
So young.
Yep. And we have even younger in our family, like quite a few who have died of various cancers, but now 3 breast cancer survivors. So I don't know. I just felt oddly hopeful about it. Like, okay, we don't have the BRCA2 gene. We didn't know much about that then, but I still kind of intuitively knew that it had probably more to do with our location near all the testing, bomb testing, which people don't roll their eyes about anymore, but used to. You know?
Of course, sure. That's right. You grew up in New Mexico, where half-lives are what? How many thousands of years?
Yeah.
It's a long time to get rid of that stuff. It's in the soil. It's in the water.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Between that and then between his mixed philosophies on, like she went on an aromatase inhibitor that's like a hormone blocker for an estrogen-fed cancer. It's a horrible drug. It causes osteoporosis and dementia and night sweats. But he was like, oh, that's fine. You know, because if you believe in it, it's going to help you. And if your doctor believes in it, is creating a treatment program, I'll help you with herbs and foods that will kind of counterbalance the negative and appreciate the good that drug can do. That, like, changed our whole scene. She did a double mastectomy. She took the meds, but she did not do radiation or chemo and practiced Ayurveda. And I was like, what a good balance. I guess that's what we're all seeking.
Western and Eastern together.
Some balance.
Sure.
And that was like...
And she's okay now?
Yeah. Now we're,
past the 5
8, 9, 10 years.
So she's good.
Yeah,
do you do things for preventative for that for you?
I used to be way more specific about it. Once I kind of finished that, like a particular time of day that I would take a mixture of Manuka honey with
Manuka honey is the best.
Oh my gosh, the best.
I take it every day. I only
awesome.
just discovered it.
That is so cool.
Take it every day.
That's so cool. Yeah, mine had like cinnamon, licorice, a few that were really lymphatic cleaners. And I was thinking the other day, when I go to LA, I'm going to ask Dr. J, because he's the first person that detected breast cancer in my mom through me.
Is he Ayurvedic?
He's an Ayurvedic practitioner in LA, yeah. And I just thought,
I'll have to get his info for me because I'm going to LA in April.
Oh, perfect. You'll love him. He's at the
neat.
University of Complementary Medicine now.
I'd like to know what my dosha...
Yeah.
Dosha?
Yep.
Yeah, it is.
You'll love it. I would guess Vata Pitta with you, but I want to know. He'll tell you. They're pretty balanced, too, so you could be tridoshic. But he'll tell you immediately. He likes to be challenged, too, with don't tell him what's going on and let him tell you. Yeah. Sometimes I forget things. He'll tell me, because of your ear, nose, and throat problems. What?
I live in Nashville. Everyone's got their nose and throat.
And I just don't have those anymore.
That's
but
great.
I did as a child, and I forgot that.
Wow.
And he could detect it.
Interesting.
Yeah. There's some neat stuff like that I just love about Ayurveda. And
so now you had done 4 weeks at the hospital. You came home, brought mom and dad back to work on her.
Yep, a couple of years later.
Yeah, and so did you go back again, or was that your...
Yeah, that was the last time I was there. That was 2008, and we stayed about 6 weeks again. And we made it a little bit more of a fun journey. We went and saw the Taj Mahal and the wishing wall. We tied our wishes. And, where was that? Some Puri. Gosh, I can't remember the name of the town right now. I'm confusing it too, because shortly thereafter I went to Israel, and they have the Wailing Wall.
Yeah.
So I cannot remember the name, but it'll come to me in a minute. But we just made it Agra. That's what it was. We made it a little bit more fun and touristy, whereas my first time was silence. And there's some neuroscience behind a lot of practices in Vedic culture and Ayurveda, like eating with the right hand only, and
isn't the left hand
cleansing
the one
with
they
the left
use to wipe their bottoms?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And if you were just going to bathe even, it's really neat. It's fun. But this time I kind of wanted to more like go see some Bollywood movies. And and he was like,
Bollywood movies are awesome.
I know. I really went on a whole campaign for a minute. I kind of wanted to be in Bollywood after that.
Yeah, absolutely. They're wonderful.
It was really
actually
fun.
a big Bollywood director just passed away. I just saw that. I can't recall his name, but Yeah, those are fun films for sure.
Yeah.
So here's a question: the first time you went and you weren't really sure what you were seeking, but you went and you stayed.
Yeah.
Did you figure out what you were seeking?
I think what I found there was like a sense of home and belonging, and oddly melodies. And I am like pretty Celtic if I look at the like Scottish and Irish and Welsh influence, or if you just look at my coloring, you'll see. And the melodies were so similar that would kind of come to me.
They have more notes in their scale.
They do. Yeah, like our rags are.
Yeah, is it 9?
Outrageous.
14? I forget now.
Yeah, they're microtonal. So like, if we had just like a one, they'd have like it's so fun to get there.
To me, it's impossible to listen to that music without either all the hair standing up on your body or going into some other place.
Yeah.
It's magic.
Yeah,
it's
so
magical
true.
Music.
It's so true. I studied there that second time with a singing guru. You're supposed to call your teacher a guru. She's so cute. She's like 10 years younger than me in college in music school. And she would teach me different ones for different times of day and different health benefits. And that was a good way to learn some of the other dialects. And Sanskrit I already knew a bit just from studying meditation. But that was so much fun. Open throat singing. Like rock stars, that's all they do anyway. Kelly Clarkson is only singing with an open throat, but I had no concept how to do that. Because I'm like a flipper with my voice. I sing really like, kind of like Celtic. Yeah. And so it was so neat to incorporate all these things that were natural to me and feel like, why does this feel like home? My cousins are also adopted from Calcutta. And again, I had never thought about their birth home. They identify as Americans. But it just was so neat to kind of go, oh gosh, I just kind of get them on this different level,
Yeah.
So I guess I just felt at peace. Maybe that's what I was looking for. And really inspired. It definitely affected my music for a long time. And not that I was putting tablas, or sitars in my recordings, but just the way that I sang, or even the way I'd approach a melody, was way more bold than what I had kind of traditionally.
Plus, I would imagine that being in a place where music is so spiritual, and if that's influencing you, it can't help but take your songs to this other truthful. We're constantly told as songwriters, write the truth, write the truth, write the truth. But then if you pull in this ancient truth as well, that's powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful stuff.
Really powerful.
Yeah.
And you know what else I liked about that experience was I was living in Beverly Hills and then Hollywood and Venice, like really, and then working in Bel Air and Malibu and being really around even some A-listers and just some top people, Forbes, kinds of money that I didn't grow up around or have, and that I think I thought would make you really happy. And it was so fascinating to see that it was not what made people happy. And then to be in extreme poverty. Literally, this town, someone had started digging pipes and never completed it. So there were just ditches. You could just fall in a hole if you weren't careful walking around this village. And people would live in tents, whole families, and invite me over for a meal, which I swear I got dysentery like 14 times because I kept going and having the food, and now I'm immune, by the way, to India and Mexico. I can pretty much eat or drink anything. And they'd just be so content and have, a Casio keyboard as big as my arm, and they'd be like, "Come play a concert. I think I've got 4 AA batteries. If you want to try." It'd be like the worst concert I ever gave, and everyone would be so happy. And so it's just enlightening about how this thing that probably a lot of us seek isn't really outside, and that money and success can really be a reflection of fulfillment or happiness, because you're probably doing what you're meant to do, so you're probably getting paid well for it because people appreciate it. You're being celebrated, so you're a celebrity. you know. But that was like extremely enlightening and peace-inducing, and it kind of just changed my life for good.
Was it hard to maintain that when you got back?
Not at all.
That's good.
That's because it's LA. But I
everybody in LA meditates,
yeah.
right?
And like I worked at a studio, totally like kombucha. But I was at a studio and I was working more in country music, and guys would come in from Nashville and they'd be pretty like what you would expect of you're more just the good old boy from the South. And they'd end up coming with me because I found this Hare Krishna temple that had good vegetarian food. Because then I didn't want to eat meat. I wanted to eat all these good spiced foods that didn't make me feel sluggish or sick. And they'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll come down with you. You know, we'd go to this Hare Krishna temple. And they'd go, this is so cool. Like, I thought I wanted to go to the steakhouse, but I feel good. And these people are so nice. And it just opened all our minds. It was so cool.
Jeez, are you still meat-free?
No. Not at all, because then I got into the blood type diet.
What's your blood type?
Oh, negative.
Oh, so that's meat eaters.
I know.
I'm B positive. I have no idea
what.
You
can totally go.
I don't know what that means.
You can go pretty veggie if you want.
Yeah, I feel best when I'm veggie.
Yeah,
but every once in a while I'm like,
yeah,
eat a cow.
Yeah, totally.
Sorry, all you people from India. I'm so sorry.
It's so true. Don't worry. There's only like a third left of Ayurvedic. The other third are like allopathic medicine. They're eating meat and taking Viagra or Prozac or whatever it is. And then homeopathic, like naturopaths at the third. They have like a big UK influence, of course. They're Queen Mum till the 40s, right? Ruled India. So it's like not
a pretty sight, though.
No. Gosh.
That wasn't a good rule.
No,
it's not good.
But the influence remains, and the coolest thing that comes from that is the harmonium. That's completely British instrument. It has nothing to do with India. And it's been adopted better there than in any other culture musically. Maybe the Beatles. They have a fair amount of harmonium.
Well, because they spend a lot of time.
Exactly, Maharishi.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's one good thing I can think of.
The seventh Beatle.
Yeah. So
he wanted to be a rock star.
Yeah.
So now, how is it a part of? Do you teach meditation?
I do. I stopped for a while when I had my son.
You stopped doing meditation, or you stopped teaching?
Pretty much both, to be honest. Like when you train to meditate, you do this process for up to 18 hours a day of meditation. And I remember our teacher saying, "Okay, so the 20 minutes twice a day that you've been doing for the last about decade or so is, it's like money in the bank. It's adding up. When you get to these 18-hour-a-day advanced levels of meditation, you're really going to feel superhuman. And they'll hold, To meditate now with a group, my teacher will close his eyes and enjoy to have a glass of wine at a party, to sit and just have sort of a common interest. But the need to close your eyes and repeat a mantra sort of leaves. And I've seen that too. Like the effect has become more permanent. It just is. It's, in other words, it's just a part of your essence. You don't. Like you don't need the bells and whistles. Yeah, if you will. But I still love the process, which most 3 3/4-year-olds don't appreciate when you close your eyes and ignore them for 20 minutes. So I'll do it 2 times a day. Are you teaching your son meditation? I haven't yet. I was just considering that. Because I know little kids meditate. Yeah. I've seen it. I've had even 3-year-old students before. And they do a walking meditation. In this tradition, nobody meditates with eyes closed until they're about 8 or 9. And then they meditate as long as they are old. Because they'll get so enchanted they won't want to open their eyes. And they'll, you want them to be in the real world reality, not just the subtle layers. Kids are already in tune with all the subtle layers of life. It's learning the gross reality. Gross, I don't mean like bleh. I mean like... It has its points. Right? There are moments of bleh. I know, that's oddly the same word, right? Yeah, I think that actually is quite fitting. Yeah. But you want them... sense of time, which I still feel I can bend, wouldn't be a good thing to teach maybe in the beginning. Like, of course you can bend time and be anywhere at any place. When you're trying to learn, like, to get to school, That's a debate my husband and I have a lot.
How do you mean?
Well, because I think if you were particularly like public or even private schooling, they'd say, well, we want you here at 9. The bell will ring. So if you want to teach your child, but time is
irrelevant.
And immeasurable.
Liquid. It's a liquid state.
They might freeze in at 9:13 and go, time is not.
Yeah.
So it's balancing that.
I've had experiences, I don't know if you have, but I remember reading in college about people who could shift time by, like, they would, and it manifested in different ways. Like a woman walking down the road at night and senses someone behind her and turns and sees a man walking behind her predatorily. And I don't know if that's a real word, but I'm gonna make it up if it's not. And then the next thing, she's like across a bridge and he's miles away and she doesn't know how she got there or whatever. Cool. And or the person who's driving and then is suddenly somewhere, you know. And in a way, a lot of us zone out when we're driving and we're bending time because we'll all of a sudden appear and no time. But I swear I've had moments in my life where I said, okay, I really need this next hour to last about 2 hours, if that's cool.
Yes.
And it all works out. It's so bizarre. I don't know how it works, but it works.
I know.
And, you know, and sometimes it's minutes and sometimes, I don't know, it's bizarre.
And doesn't everyone experience that in a crisis where it tends to feel like forever?
Yes.
Or a dream.
You know, there's an article which you may actually really enjoy. You brought up neuroscience. My favorite neuroscientist is David Eagleman. I just love the way he talks and what he writes about and the things he thinks about. And I discovered him. I was on a plane and I was reading a New Yorker, and there was an article called The Possibillion about him. And it's April 25th, 2011. Is the date of the article, and it's all about how when he was little, he fell off the roof of his parents' house, and as he was falling, he experienced that sense of time slowing. Mm-hmm. And it made me think about when I was in high school. I got in a really bad car accident, and the time that transpired inside of the car versus what was happening on the outside of the car were completely different time signatures. Yes. Everything on the inside of the car was massive slow motion.
Yes.
Whereas everyone witnessing it on the outside saw it going in rapid, the car flipping many times, you know? And that always stuck. So I was reading this article about it, and he's then dedicated his scientific mind to trying to figure out how the brain senses time.
How cool.
And I was like, okay, he has me.
Right?
I'm done. I went so far as I'm like, is he married?
I love
he's very sexy. He's married.
Oh, darn.
But I find it so fascinating. And I remember this one time as a little girl needing a drink of water and waking up and getting out of bed and everything around me. It was like I was stuck in some weird, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it was like everything around me was moving at a different rate than myself. And I went into my I'll never forget this. I went into my bathroom and I turned on the light and I noticed that my arm was moving at a weird rate. And I went to turn on the water, and the water came out at like 500 times the normal rate. But everything around it was slower. It was so bizarre. And I'm like, am I awake right now? Thinking maybe I was dreaming. Right. And I was like, no, I'm definitely awake.
But like a subtler state.
Yeah, it was very strange. Yeah. And that happened to me twice as a child, where time fractured.
Oh, that's so cool.
So I'm like, time, this is a make-up. This is all make-believe.
It is. It's like, and when you start to look at the 12 hours and how they relate to the 12-tone scale and the 12 months. Thank you so much. And you start to realize it's sort of arbitrary.
It's definitely arbitrary.
Like some fractals and chaos kind of stuff where we're assigning.
Yeah.
For what reason? I guess to try to align that 365, but sometimes 366 days in a year because we're just trying to match how and why we rotate around the sun. It's
all very bizarre.
It's so fun to play
I spent, as a childhood thinking, I know if I just concentrate enough, I can walk through this wall.
I love it.
But I never
totally.
really accomplished it. But there's still a part of me that every once in a while looks at a wall thinking, I bet I could get through that. I'm not sure how yet, but one day I'll maybe figure it out. And it's weird to think those thoughts as a quote-unquote rational human being. But then you go to somewhere like India.
And they're like, of course
oh
my guru
yeah.
like moves his body all over the place. What are you talking about? And I go, I thought I wasn't crazy. I thought I could fly, and then I thought this as a kid, and it wasn't quite a dream, but it wasn't quite awake. Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. My teacher, we live in this dome where people fly all the time, and I'm going, not so crazy, but it is a subtler world, and it's what a lot of artists see. And they typically do get diagnosed in the West with not good names, from ADD to bipolar to schizophrenic to borderline personality disorder to rapid cycling type 2 bipolar to, and I'm like, ADHD.
It is interesting. The West really wants to give you a label.
Yeah.
When it's just, man, I see and feel things differently than the next person.
And typically more subtly, which is hard. Because people go, what are you talking about? It is this temperature, or it is this noise level. Like, quit being such a baby. Princess and the Pea.
Yeah.
And sadhus in India look just like the homeless man on the corner in every city in America that I've ever been to, ever. That really wild-eyed...
Explain what a sadhu is.
A sadhu is a man who's typically given up his worldly possessions. He's usually reached a point in his marriage and his life where his kids are grown up, and he doesn't need to be supporting them and working a job to feed a family, and he wants to go on a quest. They'll wear saffron color robe typically, and they'll have a long beard and a really wild look in their eyes and unkempt hair, and maybe won't even be bathing, because some of them live in caves traditionally, or just kind of rely on people being interested in what they are downloading from sort of the ether or the muse or some universal truth points. And so they're fed and cared for and revered, whereas here it's kind of like, oh gosh, do I give the... I hear the word bum, or, it's like totally different.
Except for in the movies, because you ever notice that the homeless people in the movies are the wise...
That's true.
They're prophets, right?
Yeah.
You walk past and then they kind of mumble, the crazy lunatic
Very
homeless
true.
people mumble the prophecies.
But then again, creative people make movies, so they know,
really good point.
and they're out there studying and
Yeah.
traveling and seeking, so to them that's like...
So fascinating.
Yeah.
Are you going to go back, you think?
Oh, yeah. I was actually thinking about for my 40th birthday, which is coming up. It's so hard when you have a child, because you really... To have any kind of growth or art, there is this really important part of just self-centeredness. I wouldn't say selfishness, but being really self-centric for a while. Like people in recovery, people that are healing from wounds, people that are like literally hospitalized, artists creating something that's important. And that's the only time where it's kind of acceptable, I think, in our culture and society, outside of like social media.
Right.
And then there's this time where you're a mom, and that's still important in the sense of like having a workout and eating well and tell your child, no, I'm going to take this bath and you're not going to bother me. But to go away for a long time, that's the one where I'm going, oh gosh.
Yeah, especially because he's at such an impressionable age for something like that.
And I was thinking, it'd be so fun to take him with me, but that's double the money. So I was like, Plus then he's away from my husband, from his dad. And which I don't think they'd mind. I think the experience would be worth it, but then you're like in a hospital and your mom's off having an oil, turmeric steam, and you're like, what do I do? I'm 4, because he'll be 4 next month. And so I'm really debating, but I know they'd love to have him.
Yeah.
And all the people, I remember being both times in the hospital, we were dealing with people dying, literally dying. And there'd be nothing better than a little joyful, vibrant child, a woman that got out of her wheelchair from MS and a person that was getting into a wheelchair. A kid that had been in a coma since he was 19 and was now 23.
Wow.
And was taking treatments from Dr. Raju, just wheeled in on a stretcher. Not that was starting to make sounds, which sounded like a zombie to me, but that's because he hadn't used his speech muscles in 4 years. And, watching him kind of come back to life, just fascinating. I can tell that. But that's also, that's a lot for a 40-year-old, So I just had to decide.
Although I feel like in America, we don't give our kids enough credit.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That's so true.
You look at a child in other parts of the world that's that age, and they are wise beyond their years.
So true. Our neighbor just passed, and she did not die immediately. So the ambulance took her away, but Ryman was outside playing. Our friend who's 2 was outside with him. And I remember thinking, how much do I protect them? There's blood and gore because she's had a fall. She's 97. But it's also real life. She's like a beautiful old woman who's led a beautiful life. And there's blood because it's a head wound. Like, the head bleeds. And I was right. It ended up not even being a hematoma. No concussion, nothing. What happened, unfortunately, is she broke C1, C2. Mm-hmm. So ultimately, that was the pain. But she's lying there, and she's not even in pain yet because she's in shock from the fall. And I'm like, there's a pool of blood, and I don't want the little kids to be terrified. But I also don't want to sequester them away and make it scary, like this moment, and then mommy and the ambulance and fire department were here. So I would kind of like, was really cognizant of coming back in and saying, well, Miss Elizabeth is hurt. Like, her head has blood, but she says it doesn't hurt bad. So it's like when you scrape yourself and get blood, and, you know, I guess we should wash that when she gets to the hospital, but we'll bring her a blanket. And, you know, they stayed in with my girlfriend. She's the mom of the 2-year-old. And I'm so glad that we sculpted that, because they remember it as a very sad day because Miss Elizabeth fell. But she lived for 2 more days. So they also, the 2-year-old, we haven't talked about this, but Ryman, you know, she also did pass the hospital. But then she was with her family and friends. And then dying is sad when you're 4. You don't want to die ever. So that, you know, comes up. But then seeing the firemen and the ambulance, seeing how happy she was, you know, being kind of helped by people that dedicate their lives to helping. You know, it's true that it has not been traumatic at all.
But that's the thing, it's multi-layered.
Yeah.
Because life is multi-layered. It's not just like death is tragic, life is wonderful. It's not like that at all. Life is tragic. Death can be wonderful. Yeah. Depending. I mean, if you're 97,
exactly.
You're like, I feel pretty good about this right now. You know?
Totally.
A friend of mine's mother recently passed, and I went and I wish I had gotten her on the podcast, but by the time it occurred to me, she was too far gone. She's dying of cancer, and I had a lovely conversation with her. She had zero fear of death. She was right with everything. And just the wisdom of this woman, it just felt good to be around her.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And we Americans are terrified, of course, of death. Absolutely, our own mortality. It's interesting.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if you know, this is like delving into some stuff, but part of that, I think, comes from the newest versions of Christianity, like King James forward, because a great fear tactic was to remove reincarnation from any spiritual teachings, and any teachings of Jesus or any of the old Gospels. Like I have, I'm trying to remember the name. It's a really... It would be considered like quite out there now in the branches of Christianity, but it's kind of based on older...
The Gnostics?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We were like, well, of course. You know, what are you talking about? It was in the Bible, but they just...
Oh, they took those out? They absolutely, they took those out, because if you read them, they're basically saying, you got this. Not only you got this, but you are God.
Right.
Like, everything is already inside of you, and you can't rule somebody who's a walking incarnation of, you know... Yeah. It's just so fascinating.
Yes. Which is funny, because most of the older people I meet, they're starting to come to this neat peace with their own faith, of whatever faith it is.
Sure.
That has a lot less ruling and a lot less fear. And a lot more peace.
Yeah.
Which, like, all religions tend to have these cross points of, oh yeah, that's what they say there. That's what Jesus said. That's weird. That's what the Buddha taught. That's what, you know, because they're universal truths. They're undeniable.
Universal truths.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And, like, I guess if you're only going to have one life, you better really follow what you're told.
Yeah.
Because that's it. But I start to sense this just way less fear, you know.
Yeah.
As people age and start facing death, usually with terminal illness or...
Well, it can go either way, too. I mean, there are those that fight it tooth and nail, I suppose.
True.
But, I mean, I hope you're right. It's funny. I have moments where I think, if this were my last breath, would I be like, no, not yet? Or would I be like, okay, it's cool because I'll be right back. Or, you know, maybe I'll take a minute. But I believe in reincarnation, personally.
Cool.
Which, you know, I talked to my father, Mr. Scientist, and he's like, okay, you know, we have these really lovely conversations about it. He thinks I'm slightly crazy, of course.
I love it.
But, you know, but he's respectful about it. And the older he gets, he used to be, I would say, atheist, but
Yeah.
the older he gets, like, I think he's now more agnostic.
Totally.
Because why not hedge your bets, right?
Totally. I've really watched that happen. And Maharishi was a physicist.
And
And
I didn't
he's
know that.
very science-minded, and he always had the best way of describing reincarnation, because it would explain to me why there was a boy here in Tennessee who remembered how to fly planes. He was a war pilot. You remember this?
I saw that special. It's on YouTube if anybody wants to watch it. And I'll put links of everything we've been talking about. I'll probably have to email you and say, send me some information, and I'll stick it on the website, because it's fun to give people that information.
Yes.
I saw that. He said, I went down in this plane, and this was my best friend, and this was my name. And yeah.
That was so cool. And that was like a pretty Christian family. It's like the South. That's some pretty pure, what are you doing to us, son? What are you talking about? So that's some purely uninfluenced expression of that. Whereas then I watched The Unmistaken Child, where it's one of the lamas. I think there are 14 to the Dalai Lama, if I remember right. And this is a culture where they completely believe in reincarnation. And as this lama is dying, one of his students is like, I can't live without you. This is terrifying. Like, you tell me what to do, and I can't make it. So he says, that's fine. Come find me. I'll reincarnate somewhere. And this documentary is fascinating.
What's it called?
The Unmistaken Child.
Okay, I'm going to have to watch it.
Yeah.
I love documentaries.
Really fun. It's really good. And so in between that is Maharishi's concept of how you can explain these memories or experiences if you look at an ocean of water. And within that ocean, if we were each to be our own mason jar, it's kind of the whole point in meditation. We can totally talk about that later if we want to, because it's like why I teach meditation. But if you're this jar that contains its own water, which is soul, spirit, life, consciousness, life force, whatever you call it, you place that mason jar in the ocean, and the water's not really going anywhere because the jar is full. As you live life, like little bits of that water leave and little bits of new water come in, but it's still all the same ocean. But people start to typically change, become a little more expanded or different, because the water that is all of us, we're all one, is vaguely, slowly getting into that jar. But one day, death, a hammer, taps that jar. And so the container is missing. We can't immediately identify that's jar, Susan, that's jar, Alyssa. But the water's still not really going anywhere yet. And over time, it starts to move. So if a new jar quickly scoops it up, there'll be so many more memories and so much more of the same exact particles of water. Whereas if a little time passes and like a little bit's moving over towards Japan, maybe from the coast of Hawaii, when you scoop up that jar, there's only 2 or 3 drops that were
That's
the
a
water.
great metaphor.
Isn't it good? And it just made so much sense to me. I was like,
by the way,
wow.
I have a picture of him in my car.
Oh, how cool!
Yeah, he
really?
sits right in my little cup holdery
it.
thing behind a little Christmas ornament that I cut apart that just says joy.
Oh, I love
It's
it.
my little reminder.
That's so cool.
So I just look at that. I'm like, cool, dude.
I love it. Do you meditate?
It's funny. I do the stuff I listen to at night sometimes. There's stuff on YouTube, and I listen to that, and it puts me out. And I wake up at the end of it, and I remember certain things, like meeting my higher selves or all that stuff.
Oh, that's
but
cool.
my philosophy, at least presently, is that this is all a meditation. This is a meditation. When I'm eating my dinner, it's a meditation. When I'm walking, it's a meditation. When I'm taking a shower is a meditation. For me, it's just a moment of knowing where you are and being in that. Am I like that all the time? No, of course I forget, like everyone else. But I've tried doing the sit on the thing, and I'm like the ADD, I'm like, la, 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 and my brain starts
torture.
so that's a little tough. But I have practiced in my lifetime. I have not yet gotten to a point where it feels like the right thing yet. I wanted to do, after listening to the this Experiments in Truth, the Ram Dass lectures. I was like, I should try this TM stuff. And then I heard this really hilarious podcast where these girls in LA were like, because everyone in LA does TM.
Yeah.
And they're like, they gave us our Om, or, our chant. And then we found out that it was related to our birthdays, and that everyone with that birthday gets that chant, and and they were so devastated. They paid like $400 for the chant. And I'm like, first of all, I don't have $400 to pay for a chant, and second of all, I do really feel like a lot of my life is in practice. So, I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah.
I always say, I need to just sit and just be. And I love being alone. I'm a big loner.
Yeah.
And like you, when I go into groups of people and stuff, I feel very like, what?
Yeah.
It's an awkward feeling.
Yeah.
Like an interloper, I guess.
Yeah. Ooh, interloper. Wait, explain. I'm like
an interloper, like they're all there for a purpose. They all are part of the same clan or experience or whatnot, and then here I come and I'm like, this is all so alien to me, So I've been an interloper my whole life. When I was little, I always said fishbowl. That's what I said. I was like, I feel like I'm in a fishbowl floating through the world, and people tap on the glass, and I'm like, what's going on? But now I know it feels more like I just alien. That feeling of being an alien.
Yes.
Where you keep thinking, anytime now, you can come back for me. I'm ready. I've got a bag. I don't need the bag though. I'll just, we stopped at I always make this joke, the alien family stopped at the gas station and I got out to pee and then I came back out and they were gone. I was like, what the fuck? Come back. And I've been waiting ever since. Whatever.
So funny.
Yeah.
So E.T.
Yeah, exactly.
I grew up loving and identifying with.
Yeah.
And of course, George Lucas as well had all his great, literally alien, Star Wars films. And Maharishi was his teacher. That's who Yoda, that's why he speaks that way, because that's how Maharishi literally sounds. He's got that very weird, that strange voice, and everything's backwards because English is his second language.
Yeah.
So Yoda speaks just like him, and
Yoda was a very good guru.
Impressed me just the same way that Maharishi did.
So you said that you wanted to say why you meditate. So why? What is the...
Oh, yeah. I think it's that experience of ocean, just being ocean, of oneness. Like, I've heard that said a million times. We're all one. Like, if you're just looking at science, my friend's father is a gravitational physicist, and then...
Cool.
I know. It's fun. And then, so she's always talking that, and nuclear physics, and all these things where, again, you're like, it's your leptoquark, really? Like, all matter. Like, this doesn't really exist. It's all leptoquark. It would drive me nuts. Why, then, can I touch it? Like, don't tell me it doesn't exist, or I'm the same because I have skin that bleeds, and that's metal. Yeah, it would make me crazy.
Yeah.
Don't say that he's like me because he's mean. Well, because what, he's a reflection. He is you.
Yeah.
It's just a wave reflecting this way in the sun instead of a wave being down on the water being still.
Right.
So, same shit. Sorry to say, but it is. It's just that there's nobody that's wrong or stupid or different.
Right.
And but I always feel all of those things, or I think the other person is. Either or. Especially when it comes to politics or social life, or and. I don't want to feel that's a waste of time, and it's upsetting, but I can't understand what you're saying to me when you say we're all one. So I decide to experience it with meditation, to just feel at peace, to just even want to live life, to be really blunt. I just don't think I was interested really in it until I really experienced, even the people that I think I detest, they're actually... they're quite the same. We were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier when you came in. Mm-hmm. It just makes for a much more pleasant experience. It's like
when I went and talked to that Grand Dragon in the KKK. Never in a million years would I think I'm going to go sit in this guy's living room and have a conversation. And the reality is, he's a human being.
Yeah. And
it's easy to go, that's not a human being.
Right.
That's the easiest thing in the world to do.
That's the easiest thing. That's right.
But in a way, by doing that, it empowers all the things that he thinks.
Yeah.
To me, in my philosophy,
So true.
For me to be able to sit and talk to him and be like, hey, mirror, mirror, mirror on the wall. If I had been raised by your parents, I'd be you.
Yeah.
If you had been raised by my parents, you'd be me.
Yeah.
In a way, and it's so easy to forget that, It's fascinating stuff. Isn't it, though? Humans. Crazy kids.
I know. It's so cool.
It's hard to wrap your brain around. And there is a very powerful thing about, I've sat in I've gone to Buddhist meditation and sat in a room with other Buddhists. I'm not Buddhist, but I'm interested in the practice. Like all religions and practices, I find them fascinating.
Yeah.
And so I want to experience them instead of just reading about it in a book. I'm like, I want to go check it out. And there is something very inexplicable. There, in other words, no words for being in a room. Everyone's meditating. It's bizarre. You almost think you're going to open your eye and see somebody floating a little bit, or that you might be floating, and it's so wild. I watched the documentary. It's called Particle Fever, about the Higgs particle, the God particle at CERN. And they were trying to find it. And
want to watch this?
Oh, it's really, really, really cool. And there's the theoretical physicists, and then the regular, whatever I call regular physicists. And I dig the theoretical physicists because they're imagining these things, and then they spend their lifetime trying to prove that they exist, or not exist. And I love that. It's a whole philosophy built on faith, really. Wow. All science, in a way, is faith.
Yeah.
Because you have...
I call it a religion. Even the way that you can be...
I think it's true.
Yeah.
You said a gravitational physicist. I just said it in my mind. I picture, at home, he's working on, math problems, and as he's writing, he starts to float. And then he erases that, and he goes back down in his chair, and then he writes something else, and but, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
No, that's what's baffling, and that's what, on the grosser levels, is just impossible. I'll tell you this quickly, because this, changed my world the first time that I was in India. Dr. Raju would do a lecture. I think at this point, if I've heard right, and I would have to verify this to really say it's true, but he qualifies as a saint, and it has to do with how you help people, and for profit or not, and the kind of things you can achieve. Some would say miracles, some would say science, but he was helping a woman somewhere in the West. I feel like it was Iowa, but I could be wrong, who was diagnosed as a schizophrenic. And part of paranoid schizophrenia is that you hear voices and you hear things that don't exist. But the time difference was so off, and he does so much work with people that travel 18 hours that don't have money to even take the train, that his schedule is really strict. So he could only talk to her at 3 o'clock in her morning, which was 2 o'clock afternoon, his time in India. And she sounded crazy to most people and was medicated for it, because she would hear these pots and pans and this banging, and people would say, what? Oh my God, I don't know what you're talking about. There's not pots and pans and this banging that you're talking about. But he said, sure enough, 3 a.m., her time is a very subtle, most people are sleeping, so subtle levels of the world are being expressed. And he gets on the phone with her, and he immediately hears the pots and pans and the banging. And he goes, you're not crazy or schizophrenic. You're experiencing life on all the most intricate, subtle levels. And if you're not going to be a healer or be, sort of making art or living that life, there's no need for it. We could give you some herbs and things that would tone that down. You don't need to. I, as a physician, have to know when somebody's been near my food and they're sick, because I can't afford to be sick because I'm helping people. You don't need that skill. You can have a cold. You can live a more, if this is not what you want.
Yes.
And that was life-changing for me, because we have the Van Goghs cutting off their ears because of the things they hear and
feel.
Yes.
God, feeling is a
Kurt
bitch.
Cobain's that just go, I know that people want me to die, that this is like part of my, why do you know that? What are you talking about? But maybe on some subtle level he was tuning into something, and you can choose to, and if you're going to be an artist and starve and live like a homeless person, that's great. I've done it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Like, totally down for it.
Yeah.
But some people aren't, and maybe you don't need to medicate them with these horrible side effect drugs, or yellow 5 or blue lake 1, which we're doing anyway with our food and our fluoride. Don't even get me started.
Yeah.
But maybe you can either help them learn to express themselves and live in this subtle world and use that power to heal, or you can help them tone it down, like with really warm oils and foods. And it just was like a no-brainer to him, where she had spent her life in and out of treatment and hospitals.
So he helped heal her
In a minute, and I was like, oh.
That is another thing that my father and I talk about, because he's a big Western medicine guy, of course, scientist, and I say to him, there are subtleties to the human that Western science doesn't have a grasp on. And all they really wanted, and I'm speaking in a gross generality, which, to anyone listening out there that's a doctor, I don't mean to offend, but it's almost an assuredness that you walk into a doctor, you say, this has been ongoing, plaguing me for, a couple months, whatever it is. And they're like, take this pill.
Yeah.
Not, let's get to the root of this.
Yeah.
Did you have an emotional trauma that's triggered eczema? Did you have some sort of other, is there stress things? Is there this? Is there that? They don't go down into the marrow of the human where the truth lies.
Yep.
They just go, take this pill. Yep. The Matrix pill, I guess. Right? And it just truly, actually, in a lot of cases, makes people sicker, because it makes them more dependent on whatever drug they're being told to take, which is a shame.
Yep.
But it sells a lot of money, makes a lot of money for a lot of people.
So true.
Yeah, it's very, I'm not dissing modern medicine. Mold was a revolutionary miracle.
Right.
Right. I'm not dissing that at all, but I do think that a lot could be said for digging in a little deeper.
So true.
If you have, let's say, a growth growing on your leg, and I said, oh, here, come into my office, and I just snipped the top of it off and put a Band-Aid on it, guess what?
Yep.
It's going to grow back. The root of what it is down deep inside of you. Yep. And unless I get to that root and truly remove all that, it's... Anyway, I can go on and on and on. All this stuff.
So
I think about
true.
this stuff all the time.
We have to hang out always.
But it's true. It's like there's so much. All right, so I'm changing tact again, because you said, and I'm so impressed that you learned these languages. I'm so impressive to me.
Which languages?
Well, you said some Sanskrit.
Oh,
that you learned
yeah.
some
Urdu. I'm talking like if I were trying to say I spoke Spanish, I say hola and gracias. I learned some more. My Sanskrit's fairly good, just because I had to study so much, but just like a yoga teacher would, or a...
So what is your favorite word that is not of your native tongue? Of all these different languages?
That's a really good one. I'm going to have to go with right now. This would change by the minute. And we're working on Spanish with my son, so I'm totally into Spanish right now. But I want to go a little more Sanskrit. Hum brahmasmi isn't actually a phrase.
Say it again.
Hum brahmasmi.
Hum brahmasmi.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that?
And you usually have an ah in front, and in Sanskrit also at the end sometimes. But a hum brahmasmi sort of means, in a loose translation, I am the totality. Or I am fulfillment. Or I am complete. There's not a thing that I'm seeking outside of anyone but me.
That's cool.
Isn't that cool?
It is cool.
It's a good phrase to use if you're feeling scared or stressed.
Don't you feel like for so many people, when they're seeking, as they seek and seek and seek, and then they touch that thing that becomes their touchstone, that thing that it was actually in them the whole time.
Yeah.
But that's why it speaks to them, because, wait a minute, it resonates from within. Yeah. It's never out here. It's been there the whole time. It's like that moment when the Good Witch tells Dorothy, you had the power to go home all along.
So I love the Wizard of Oz. Of course you're doing that.
Yes. You know, I had this great epiphany I was driving to work one morning. This is so crazy. And my brain just goes wherever it goes. And all of a sudden in my mind, and it was so perfect for what I needed during that time anyway, but I was driving, and in my mind I saw, you know, in the Wizard of Oz where the witch goes across and Dorothy looks up and it says, "Surrender, Dorothy." Yeah. And everybody panics, right? And Dorothy's like, "Fuck!" You know, I probably shouldn't swear so loudly with a 4-year-old upstairs, but, you know, Dorothy's like, "Oh my gosh." And it struck me in that moment in my car, I actually burst into tears because I realized that it wasn't "Surrender, Dorothy," like, rah, rah, rah. It was, "Surrender, Dorothy." And guess what? It'll be way easier. But she goes through the struggles. She deals with all the strife. She does all that stuff only to find that she had the power the whole time. And if she had just... It chokes me up now just to talk about it. If she had just started... And I'm driving my car sobbing over this realization that it took my whole entire life to get. Yep. I've seen that movie 1,000 times. You know, why driving in my car that day?
Did it hit you?
It hit me so...
Well, that's what meditation does, that same thing.
Yeah.
It's like instead of taking acid, or having an ayahuasca trip, or eating mushrooms, which people can really successfully do, and I'm not bagging those, but sometimes you'll see when their physiology wasn't in line with that enlightenment moment, they look crazy afterwards. They never are quite the same. So when you slow and steady, you see that movie and you read these books. That's what meditation does. It's like slowly opens the mind to that moment. Like, I wish I could just have Jesus come and tap me on the forehead like he did to some of those disciples. And even some of my born-again friends, I'm like, how'd you do it? They don't know how. Yeah. They don't have the answer. It just happened.
Well, they've done brain scans on people doing meditation, and it's the same thing as being on
slow and steady. Yes. Yeah, and it will open that mind, and the physiology will stay in line.
Yeah. I spent my 16th year very high.
I was probably with you
on LSD and or pot. For the whole year, I was just
probably right there with you.
It was awesome, and I would never trade that out of
Timothy Leary. I got really into all his studies and the why you couldn't maintain an LSD hallucination past day 3 if you dosed 3 days in a row. And all these kind of cool stuff, and they're all the same as meditation. Yeah, I look back now, I'm like, maybe that's why I needed some physical exercise and some meditation way more than I needed those drugs.
Well, that's teaching it in schools is not such a horrible idea.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I agree. And they've shown. I've read studies of that. The students that do meditation in their classroom, their test scores are higher, their concentration levels are higher, they're happier kids. You know, it makes sense. Yeah. It's your brain is just this electric, staticky, wet, gooey thing that's like. It makes total sense.
It's so cool.
It is so cool.
And we're getting there. Like David Lynch Foundation, Paul McCartney's a big part of that, like getting meditation in schools and not doing any of where it's from or why, so that we're not having to deal with like
the religion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you could be like the purest,
just relaxing,
or the like most conservative Jew, or the whatever, and still get to meditate, and it could only enhance your own faith. Yeah. And you could do it in school, and you wouldn't be crossing boundaries. And I love that they're really working and finding ways to bring that to people in high schools.
It's wonderful.
Sheryl Crow, Bruce Springsteen, they're all part of that.
Yeah, it's great.
And now you're inspiring me to think that my son's school would love it. Yeah, you can't instruct in the Reggio Emilia based. It's like an Italian form of learning that's all play based. So it would be like just trying to do something that might be fun for you that would bring your own meditative state, so there'd be no instruction. That would be really cool.
What's the hardest thing for you when you're teaching meditation to impart on your students?
Let them know that you don't meditate and have the wonderful experience because your mind is clear. That never happens. You don't achieve nirvana because you were able to sit still and everything erased. It's quite the opposite. You're usually sitting and your mind is quite full, but that mantra will typically be so charming, like a beautiful melody or this like Rachmaninoff piece that I've always loved. That's always intrigued me. That just like pulls my mind away. I can't hear anything else. Whenever that comes on, even in a movie, it will distract me. That's what this mantra does. And so because you're so enchanted by this mantra, problems leave. The mind quiets for a moment. That's the opposite of what I always thought it was. Like, I thought I had to achieve that, and then I would feel happy or silent. It's the opposite. So they'll be having thoughts, or they'll be having like, but my mind talks. Yeah, good. It's always seeking greater happiness. That's the mind's job. That's a good job.
Yeah.
You know? To seek greater happiness.
Yeah.
Good.
Man.
We just have so many more options now that it's more exhausting, because maybe it's this, maybe I should type this, maybe I should go in here, what if I check this? You know? But it will be so enchanting, that mantra. Even in TM, you know, where they are like, the Beatles famously kind of found out a lot of them had the same mantra too, and they were so mad, but then they still went and did it.
Yeah.
It was so charming. Like,
yeah.
That's why we all like the same pop song. Sorry, but it's charming.
Yeah.
Like her or not. Whatever
yeah.
that artist is at the moment that I go, I can't believe it's a hit, but I love it. I want to hear it, kind of. You know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's for a reason. And
the brain likes what the brain
yes.
likes. It's, I mean, that goes down to mathematics.
Right?
And repetition. And, yeah, it's the universal truth.
So, it is. And
Yeah.
that's why that constant repetition becomes so powerful. Even if your 20 minutes of meditation is like, oh my gosh, but I didn't do this, and I forgot to buy this.
There's a hole
and
in my sock, right?
Yeah, exactly. Fine.
Yeah.
It's still correct. And
so how can people find you? Are you teaching right now?
I've just started having people ask again. So I was talking today about just reactivating the site. It's just Nashville Meditation Center.
Okay.
Because I do feel sort of a duty. I've had people that have, like, literally a woman that suffered panic attacks for 20 years, just erase them.
Wow.
It took her own work and her own time, and she was with me since about 2009, but man, I realized, okay. And then with Mom's story, I get a lot of people that know someone battling cancer. What we called it was in negotiations with cancer, because we didn't want it to be a battle.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever read Bill Moyer's Healing of the Mind?
Ooh, no, but
oh, you should.
Now I'm gonna have a list from you.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Things.
But it's he interviewed all these people from all over, all these different modalities of medicine, and Eastern and Western, all this stuff. And the bottom line, of course, is that the mind, that's where it is. You know, if your brain says, and they see that the people who are, as you said, in negotiations with cancer, who, let's say, watch comedies all day long, that they have a stronger survival rate. Yep. People who go into it going, yeah, this is nothing, their survival rate, or that talk to their body and all that stuff. And there are people out there that think that's crazy, of course. But, I mean, there are people that didn't know quarks existed, and then guess what? They've always been there. It just took time to find them. You know, you could argue for anything, really, if you wanted to be argumentative, but why not try?
So true.
Why not try and heal? Yeah, you'd probably really dig that book.
Yeah, I would love
Healing of the Mind.
Awesome.
Bill Moyer, who's awesome. Bill, he did all the Joseph Campbell stuff. Bill Moyer did.
Yeah, because didn't they talk about that a little bit? And
they do, yeah.
The Secret, I think they were all involved in.
Yeah.
Even Esther Hicks originally, but I don't see her anymore in the news.
I don't either. Then again, I don't watch the news anymore because it's super depressing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
This is happy. So lovely. I feel like I could talk to you for hours. But,
I
know. So it's Nashville Meditation Center.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and
I'll have to read. It's hidden right now, so I'll just have to.
Oh, okay.
Open that site back up.
Yeah.
Basically, I didn't want people asking to learn, and I couldn't find the time.
When you couldn't do it, sure.
But it's like the demand is back, and you just have to make time.
Yeah.
So, and Ryman's 4 now almost, so he'll be more open to it.
Yeah.
He used to really enjoy it. I'd do a little retreat weekend at the house when this was the old house.
Yeah.
And now there's more room, so it could be even better.
Yeah. Well, this room has great energy.
Yeah, totally agree.
For real.
And we're partially submerged. That's why. Some of those negative ions. Like, that's Earth. If you look
I'm a big fan. I'm a Taurus, so me and Earth are
Awesome.
we're like that.
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah, I spent most of my childhood barefoot. That's
totally.
definitely. You probably did too, because you're Pisces.
Totally.
Yeah, you need that grounding. Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Is there like any kind of? I know that your website is right now hidden, but it will be reactivated. Can people get in touch with you? Or
Yeah,
is it...
still through my... because I'm also an artist, I always have AlissaMoreno.com.
Okay.
And that always goes to my email. So
okay.
I've had people before when I was kind
do
of
you do like private
meditation.
lessons for people? If somebody heard this and said, "Oh, I'm curious about this," but I
probably
don't really want to do a
very
group.
first student came
okay.
privately from podcast from a comedian.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was an
great.
LA comedian in Chicago.
Okay.
And someone said, "Can I please?" Yeah, I'll do tons of private lessons. I actually enjoy that.
Because some people might be nerved to be like, "Oh, I don't want to do the group thing," until I really get my head wrapped around it.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was awesome. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Bye everyone.